Alright, today I'm reviewing the 6th MCU TV show and the 36th product off of the MCU assembly line overall, Ms. Marvel, which is about the superhero mega fan Kamala Kahn. She accidentally gains powers and then she has to deal with that. She has to, in the style of her idol Captain Marvel, she tries to be a superhero. But the catch is, she's just this teenage girl. She has to balance grades, her duties to Islam, she has to balance boys, and, this whole superhero thing going on. Which you've seen before, but it's still fun. Now, right off the bat, my favorite TV show trope of all time is in full effect here, and that is teenage characters wearing flannel. Every time Netflix, Disney Plus, any of the streaming services, any TV show wants to show a likable teenage character, they wear flannel, and it's so funny. I'm very glad to report that Ms. Marvel does that. Most of the time it laces her friend Bruno, but occasionally the heroine does sport it herself, which I appreciated. That's important flannel representation. Other teenage tropes like love triangles and school bullies are present, but like most MCU appropriations, most of the new to you elements do get dropped after the series starts rolling and then the superhero aspect kicks in. There were a few fun stylistic flares to Ms. Marvel that you've never seen before in the MCU, like little doodles float around screen, character text messages, they show up when appropriate. I always enjoy seeing Muslim representation and seeing Ms. Marvel actually follow through on that, Moon Knight, but seeing Ms. Marvel follow through on the character's roots, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the deep dive into Islam and seeing the mosques. I like all that. I also, contrary to some of the online critiques I've seen, really enjoyed the love triangle between Kamran and Bruno and Ms. Marvel. It's a teenage show. What are you expecting? There's gotta be a love triangle. Most of all, though, I liked the heroine. Ms. Marvel has long been a favorite of mine, specifically since 2016, when for Christmas I got the Lego set with her minifigure in it. So I was really excited for this TV show. Iman Vellani is pitch perfect in the role. I hope I got her name right. Maybe not. But she is pitch perfect in the role. Like, in my mind, she is as synonymous to the character of Ms. Marvel as Robert Downey Jr. is to Iron Man. Her enthusiasm rubs off on the show in the best way, and the interviews and just stories I've read just basically confirm that she's the same thing in real life. Arguing with Kevin Feige about 616. I mean, that is peak Ms. Marvel. I really like that. It's a great character-actor match, and I'm all for it. However, it's interesting to note that we've gotten to the point in the MCU where it's like so large and expansive that Kamala, being like a really big fan of superheroes, can basically become a self-insert for the audience at home that's actually grown up with this franchise. It's weird. It's like the first episode, it's like kind of rebellious that she likes superheroes. It's a very interesting message, like liking superheroes can make you a superhero too. Enjoy our products. Maybe that's just the cynicism in me coming out, but I did think that was interesting to note. As this is an MCU product, the same general basic complaints do exist. The action is really weird editing, the CGI is wonky at times. The show is more interesting when it's about the non-superhero aspects. It's either too long for a movie or too short for a TV show. I think it should have been like 22 minutes and like 12 episodes. They use famous pop songs over action scenes, and I get that Guardians of the Galaxy was cool, but it doesn't really work here with Bon Jovi over action scenes. It just felt weird. The stakes went too big, the villains are weak, and the MCU, most of the stuff that it does new is only new when compared to the rest of the MCU. So if you're like a MCU fan that doesn't watch anything outside of the MCU, there's probably going to be some stuff in here that you're like, wow, this is super cool and new and fresh. And otherwise, you'll probably be like, yeah, I saw this before several times. And there are some aspects that, again, compared to the rest of the MCU, that this series did really well at. I really like the cinematography and lighting, which was most of the time in like purple and yellow, which makes sense given her costume. The music is good, but the actual main theme is either generic or I'm just over brass being used for superhero themes. Maybe it's one or the other. The humorous beats don't ruin emotional moments. Good for you, MCU. And I really like that a healthy dose of teen angst was a driving force for some of the conflict in the series. That's great. Teens are so angsty. You wouldn't believe. I also really like the amount of care taken to, presumably, because, I'm not one, but accurately portray the life of a typical Pakistani-American Muslim girl. Again, I'm not one, so I'm assuming Ms. Marvel did a pretty good job at it, but I don't really know. I also really like the effort that went into portraying partition. Alternatively, there are some problems that are wholly unique to the show. While I appreciated the focus on the British partition of India, which I knew embarrassingly little about before the show, thank you for enabling me. I spent lots of time on Wikipedia learning. Yeah, that's just a failure on my part. But the show spends a lot of time on it, to the point where half of episode 5 is a flashback focused on Kamala's like great grandmother meeting her great grandfather. Like 20 minutes, like half of the episode is that story. It's a strong blip in the middle of the series, and like while the quality was excellent, it just is out of place because it doesn't really flow with the rest of the series. It reminded me of Avatar 1, the second season of Legend of Korra, because you see the second season and you're like, Avatar 1, those episodes were dope. But then at the same time, it's like, why were they there? Another thing the show divided me on was the change to Kamala's origin. In the comics, Kamala is a stretchy inhuman whose appendages embiggen. In the show, she's part Jinn, and she harnesses her powers through a magic bangle. And her powers aren't stretchy, but rather like kind of Green Lantern-ish constructs. On one hand, I really appreciated that power change felt more personal to Kamala Kahn and her journey, and it allowed for like a very close thing with her family and the partition. I enjoyed that aspect of it. On the other hand, I was really looking forward to the Inhuman stuff. Like, I like the Inhumans. I was looking forward to that lore, but unfortunately, it was not there. Also, the Green Lantern powers kind of felt like generic, like it's just more glowy things. I've seen a lot of glowy things. I haven't seen a lot of stretchy things. And maybe that's because stretchy things don't work too well in live action. Like, Kamala's like fist itself embiggens. Maybe that would just look really weird, so I kind of get it, but also it just feels generic. It also felt really slow. Like, imagine you're being mugged and like this little girl starts running across the rooftops and she's only as fast as this kid is, so, and her powers are really loud when she steps on these little platform things, so she just starts like running. She's only as fast as she can run, and she's not exactly the Flash, so I don't know how effective she would be at like guarding the streets of Gotham. No, not Gotham, of Jersey City. She lives in Jersey. And you know, again, the personal connection to the Jinn backstory, that's the catalyst the show uses to draw in these incredibly weak villains that I just did not care about. Like, I have no clue what their name was. Like, the Hand? No, that's Daredevil. I don't know. They were from another dimension. And then the stakes just get too big. Like, I wish the series was really small. It didn't have any of the multiverse stuff or big glowy explosions. I wish it was just Ms. Marvel figuring out her own powers, dealing with like street level crooks. Maybe like have a baby Kingpin if you really want to stretch things. It's like a little baby mob boss that she takes down. But other than that, just keep it small. And Ms. Marvel did not keep it small. They spend a lot of time developing this Jinn lore, which again I already wish was Inhuman lore. And that takes the focus away from Kamala's life, which the show did infinitely better at. Again, it's more boring when it's about the superhero. I've seen magical backstories. I've seen people trying to figure out their powers. You know what I haven't seen? The everyday life of Kamala Kahn. And that's why those aspects were so much more interesting. That's why the first, second, third, and sixth episodes were much better than the fourth and fifth, because they focus on Kamala. Ms. Marvel is a lot of stuff we've seen before. Teen superheroes figuring out their powers, an ever-changing logo, quirky art covering the screen, and fun training montages. The last one especially. Shazam's training montage was so fun, and then Ms. Marvel's was like so weird. It just wasn't fun. It didn't have a flow to it. It was just, she jumped off of a building briefly. It wasn't a fun montage, even though it had like fun music in the background. However, for all my gripes about this show, there are enough emotional beats that carry this show for me. I loved her cast of supporting characters. I loved her dynamic with her family, especially her dad. Her conversation with her dad in the last episode was just perfect. I was getting teary-eyed, I'm not gonna lie. Her journey to becoming a fully realized hero, that was the thing that really got me sold on the show. The last 8 minutes. Seeing Kamala look in the mirror and realize that she is Ms. Marvel now, that was the money shot. That was the thing that endeared the series, that made it worth it for me. Because all throughout the series, she's always looking in the mirror. She's dressed in her regular clothes, she looks in the mirror when she's dressed in her Captain Marvel cosplay, and then finally in the last episode, she is wearing her Ms. Marvel outfit. She looks in the mirror and she just seems scared, but also like she's finally accepting that this is who she is now. And that right there, that was the moment. That was the let it breathe moment, the character moment that a lot of these MCU projects missed, that made Ms. Marvel worth it for me. one of the best scenes in the MCU. In that regard, it is the model MCU product. Not only did it enhance my excitement for the Marvels, but it also told a story. Like the end credit cookies and the name drops and musical cues, those are all cool and all. But I am more excited about Kamala becoming Miss Marvel than I am about any of the other stuff. You know, a lot of the time with the MCU, you read all these articles and it's like, what do these cameos mean for the future of the MCU? With Miss Marvel, I didn't leave thinking about, wow, I wonder if John Krasinski will actually be Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four movie. I left thinking, that was really sweet and that was really touching. It does occasionally come off as like an inferior cross between Never Have I Ever and Shazam. The bubbly lead, surprisingly emotional moments, and her arc to fully realize hero make Miss Marvel worthwhile. It overcomes some of the franchise's worst villains and a divisive origin change. Also, the name drop in the last episode, because we do have to talk about it, because I love a good musical cue. But so the name drop in the last episode, it's like cool. It's a cool name drop, and I really appreciated the 97 theme, but yeah. I hope she does eventually like mutate, and get the stretchy powers though. Because at the moment, her little glowy parkour does look kind of silly. Stretchy powers have to be down the line somewhere, right? Right? Overall, I give Miss Marvel a 7 out of 10. Mostly harmless. And I'm actually excited for the Marvels now, which I wasn't expecting, but I am. I'm excited to see her again. Good on you, Marvel. Good on you.